Welcome to 3 Secrets to Heal Childhood Trauma. And in case you don't know me or know me very well, my name is Tawnya Kordenbrock. For a number of years, I had a private practice as a licensed professional clinical counselor, but now I am doing emotional coaching online, and I have an online program called Mastering Emotions, where I help women to rewire their brains so that they have different emotional responses to their upsets. And they can break free from fear, anger, and shame so they can be able to love themselves, feel loved by others, and have a deeper relationship with God. Now, let me tell you a little bit about myself because, this is about trauma. And everyone who comes to this workshop or watches this video later, you have most likely had some type of trauma. And what typically happens is people will, they tend to look at other women's stories and say, well, my story wasn't as bad as her story, or in some way they'll minimize what happened to themselves. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes people are very aware of, what happened to me. This was bad. I know this was bad. But then they struggle so much. Usually these are good, strong women, but they still struggle to handle their emotions and to be able to feel loved and to feel happy and just feel like they're okay, like there's not something wrong with them, and to be able to have nice, happy relationships. So that's one reason why I am doing this webinar, because I know that whoever is coming here, you have worked very hard already. And so what you're finding is you're still struggling. And so this will help with that. So back to a little bit about me. Now, I came from a childhood where my dad was an alcoholic, a violent alcoholic. And he was sexually abusive toward me. And then when I was 8 years old, he suddenly died of a heart attack. My mom was pregnant at the time, and I was the oldest of 3 kids. So soon as that baby was born, and she had a newborn and, 3 kids, 8 and under, which is a lot, to take care of for herself. And that created just a lot of chaos in our family. And I did not recall being sexually abused by my dad until I was much older, yet it lived out within me in my teenage years, acting out and not really knowing what was going on with me, why I was behaving like I was, even though I was a Christian. And then when I was around 30, all those memories came back to me, and I had to work through those. Went to a Christian counselor, got lots of prayer, and the Lord did a lot of healing within me also. And that was when I decided to become a Christian counselor. So when I talk about these things, not only do I have the experience of the women that I have worked with, but also the experience of from my own life. Now, let me know in the chat, does that, when I talk about you being a strong woman who has really struggled a lot and really has worked really hard to get past your past, does that sound like you? Because my guess is that it does sound like you. Yes, okay. I'm not surprised by that. So what we're going to do today is look at why it is that you have struggled so hard with having had trauma in your life, why it is that you struggle so hard. And one thing that you are probably doing wrong, I hate to tell you, but almost everyone who has had trauma does this one thing. And we're going to look at that and see how you need to be handling that differently, because it actually causes the impact of trauma in your adult life to be worse. And then a third thing we will talk about is something that you almost certainly need if you've had trauma in your past. And I'll tell you about that and what that needs to look like. Okay? Ready to go on this? And I know there's a little bit of a lag between the chat and the video. So I might have to pause every once in a while for you to catch up with me and for me to see what it is how you're responding. But okay, so let's look at why it is that you're struggling so much. For one thing, what is happening is a lot of women, what I've found is a lot of women try to use willpower. It's almost like they're using the wrong tool. They're using the tool of willpower to try to make themselves feel differently, think differently, and act differently. It's like they beat themselves up and say, you just need to quit feeling the way that you're feeling. You need to quit doing the things that you're doing. You're stupid. You're crazy. Just stop it. And they're always wondering, why can't I just be different? And that is because willpower alone cannot bring the change that needs to happen within you. What needs to change is the pattern of response that was learned during this time of trauma in your life. And willpower is not going to take away fear. It's not going to take away anger, and it's not going to take away shame. And just trying to make them go away actually causes them to be stronger. So what you need to do in changing this trauma response pattern, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second, so you know a little more what I'm meaning by that. But it's kind of like, I'm glad to see you're ready, Lynn. I just now saw your response there, and excited for the answers. Great. Okay, so it's a little bit like learning to, what you're trying to do by using your willpower is similar to saying, tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be just like the way I want to be. I am going to be, for instance, I want to be tomorrow morning a concert pianist. Well, guess what? If you've never had any piano lessons, you are not going to wake up tomorrow and be a concert pianist. How are you going to do that? Well, you're going to learn the various aspects of it. You're going to learn the notes on the piano, right? The keys. You're going to learn what the keys are. You're going to learn what notes are on sheet music. You're going to learn what chords are. You're going to learn how to, put it together. Let's do the first stanza and or the lyrics, and let's do that part. And then you put it together and you practice it over and over and over, and going a little bit further each time until finally you have all of that song down. You have it memorized, and it comes out automatically. So where your fingers just go where they know they need to go. You don't have to stop and think about it. Okay, what is the next chord I play? Where is that? No, your hands just go there. Okay, so the point of that is you can't just by willpower say, I am going to be this way. You have to learn to be that way. Now, here is why. When trauma occurs, especially as a child, and here's, we're talking about childhood trauma. This can be early adulthood trauma also, because your brain is not fully formed then. But childhood trauma, when it occurs, it is creating some very intense emotions within you, mainly fear. And the emotional part of your brain will remember that fear, and it is designed to keep you safe. You can think of this as like, it kicks in that fight or flight response. For instance, when you come upon a snake on a sidewalk, your first response is to jump back. Okay, that's because that's the emotional part of your brain. It is immediately telling you, danger, jump back, get away. Same thing if someone has a gun, walks into a grocery store and has a gun, you're going to do the same thing, because that is not the time to pause and to think about, is that a real gun? Is that just a squirt gun? Is he really going to shoot people? Or is he just, angry? Is he faking it? Is this a joke or something like that? No, you immediately are going to take cover, because that's the emotional part of your brain responding. Okay, so now let's think about childhood trauma. When that fearful event occurs, because of that intense pain, the emotional part of your brain is going to develop a pattern of response to anything that looks similar to that original pain. For instance, when, I gave the example of seeing a snake on a sidewalk. Have you ever been walking in a park or somewhere and there's a squiggly stick lying across the sidewalk? What do? As soon as you see it, you go, oh! Okay, because that's the emotional part of your brain automatically responding. Okay, so now as we relate this to relationships, emotional hurts in life, fears in life, when the emotional part of your brain picks up on any clues in your adulthood life that look similar to those early hurts, it is going to instantaneously tell you, this is dangerous. This is going to hurt. And it's going to impact your body. And if you think about, for instance, Lynn, you mentioned being upset today. Maybe you were angry, maybe you were hurt, maybe you even felt shame. But if you think about it, it probably affected your body in some way. That is because the emotional part of your brain is very strongly connected, has strong nerve networks that go down the base of your brain and connect into your body. And so it's going to impact how your body responds to emotional hurts. Now, that pattern of how you respond is the same pattern that developed when you were a child. Now, as a child, you didn't have any resources, no way to defend yourself or to escape the danger. And so what children do then is they make up these stories, these elaborate stories that helps to keep them safe and helps keep them connected with the people that they love. These stories sound like this. I am stupid. I need to shut up. My emotions are stupid. I'm just crazy. Well, I'm selfish for having the feelings that I have. I should just be a better girl. I should be a good girl. Nobody loves me. And nobody can be trusted. And so this pattern of thinking, when the emotional part of your brain picks up on anything that could be painful in your adulthood life, it's going to trigger all of those thoughts. Now you put together the emotions, the thoughts, and what happens in your body and how you physically respond. That is your pattern, okay, your emotional pattern. Now, to bring change, you cannot tell the pieces of that. You can't tell your heart, and I'm seeing your message there, Lynn. You can't tell your heart, quit pounding. You can't tell the emotion of fear like you felt today. You can't tell it to stop, just go away. You know, even if you call it names, you can't make it go away. Yeah, and that, you know, those beliefs of I'm ugly. This is why all this happens to me, because I'm ugly. You can't just say, well, quit telling yourself that. I'm just going to stop doing that. You can say it, but it's not going to work. You have to change that response pattern and all of the pieces that go into it. Okay? Let me know if that is that something that you've ever heard before? And has that ever been explained to you before? And is it making sense for you? Now, what we do, excuse me, I feel like I have lipstick on my teeth. What we do in my Mastering Emotions program is we break these patterns down and we begin looking at changing each of those pieces. And then I guide the women in there and how to do that. And I wanted to tell you about a couple of the women who have been in there. For instance, there's one who's in the early years of her. Good, it's making sense for you, but never explained like this. Okay, yeah. Most people have not heard this, and it's actually also of how the Bible describes renewing the mind, Lynn. But okay, so a woman in my membership who, in the early years of her marriage, her husband cheated on her repeatedly. And this was a trauma for her as she discovered that happening over and over and over. And it created within her a whole pattern of how she viewed herself. And any time he was upset with her, and he became defensive a lot, because that's what people do when they have addictions. But he would become defensive, and then her pattern would be she would blame herself, that she was ugly and that something was wrong with her. She wasn't good enough, and she would feel shame, and then she would just shut down. And then she would try to do whatever she could to please him and to try to make him happy with her. And so that was a pattern that we had to work on with her. And now she is at the place where she is standing up for herself. She believes in herself. And she told me the other day, she's like, for once in my life, it's like, I know who I am now. Because this pattern wasn't kicking in to where it was all about everybody else and taking care of everybody else. Finally, she was seeing who she was and valuing who she is and starting to take care of herself. And when things were, when her husband says something that's not right or looks suspicious, then she calls him on it right away, because she's standing up for herself instead of giving herself away. Okay, so that's just one example. And So let's move on to the second point that I want to explain to you, because this is something that you're probably doing wrong, and it's understandable. Before I tell you what it is, it's understandable that this would be happening. And what this is when you feel hurt by someone, or even if you fear you're going to be hurt by someone, or if you fear you're going to be rejected by them, then you pull away from them and you close down, or you attack them by calling them names or accusing them of things. So this is very understandable when you consider this trauma response that kicks in. Okay, this is I'm telling you this, and I don't want you to feel like, oh, she thinks I'm stupid, she thinks I'm terrible, or whatever. No, I'm pointing out to you that this is what the trauma response causes you to do. So unless that response is changed, then you won't be able to stay connected with people, to be able to work through difficulties in the relationship. Because what you want to be able to do when things get rough, everybody, when things get rough in a relationship, the first response is pull away, because you're fearful and you don't want it to go badly. But then what you want to be able to do is to come in closer to people and to be able to speak to them what your hurt is. And to be able to, and for them to be able to hear you, to be able to say it in a way that they can hear you. And that if they don't initially hear you, then to be able to come back with, okay, I don't feel heard here. Let me explain this differently. To be able to walk through it, even though it's scary. When your trauma response kicks in, you can't stay close with a person to be able to do that. Instead, it causes you, again, just to pull away, to shut down and to hide away, or it causes you to attack because you feel like you're going to be rejected or you're not going to be heard. Is that making sense? Because here's what we want to be able to do instead. Okay, we want to be able to get to that place where we can be able to work toward repair in a relationship instead of that shutting down or attacking. But this is, okay, so this is making sense. Good. Yeah, dysfunction definitely gets swept under the rug. Yeah, or else it wouldn't continue. But so we need other people to, this is why I have, in my membership, I have the forums, and why we do our group calls, because you need other people to affirm, to support you, for one, but also to affirm that what happened to you was not right, that it is not, your fault, especially as a child, that things happen to you. That is so, so powerful, to be able to tell someone, here's what happened, and the other person to say, oh my goodness, you did not deserve that. And so we need each other for that. But also, Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So one of the things that we need each other for is when we're in relationship and I get hurt by you, then that helps me. I'm not saying it's good that I got hurt. Okay. And that's not what, don't take that I'm meaning that, but I can use that as a tool to look at what happened for me? What kind of beliefs about myself rose to the surface when you said what you said? Did, when my trauma response kicked in, did I tell myself, oh, she said that because she thinks I am too ugly to be a friend with me? Or she said that she did that because she really doesn't like me because everybody thinks I'm stupid or everybody thinks I'm crazy. Okay, so we can use that, our interactions with others, to be able to look at what it is that we believe about ourselves and what we believe about other people in general, because that's the trauma response coming up to the surface. And so what we do in my membership then is you can always come in there into the forum, and as you're discovering things about yourself as you go through the program, and you can say, well, this happened to me today and with this person, and then we would examine that and then try to change that within you to get to a healthier place, so that when you get upset, then you can more be able to interact with that other person, which I know that is one thing that you told me you tried to do today. And so look at that bravery that you had in trying to convey, with the person that you talked to today, of how hurt that you were. Unfortunately, they weren't the kind of person, it sounds like, who was going to have any sympathy. But good for you for, in some ways you said you spoke up for yourself, you had a voice. And so that is, if that were to continue and you were to grow in your abilities to do that, Lynn, then that would bring change to that pattern for you. So that would become easier and easier, instead of that, pulling away and that submitting to how the bad treatment from others. And also it would help you to be able to see other people for if people were abusive, you wouldn't have to be deeply involved with them before you saw that they were abusive. You would notice that right off. Okay. So let me see. I was going to tell you a story about one of the women that I work with, and I forget what I was going to tell you with that. So let me know, does that part make sense for you, of how we can use our interactions with others to actually examine what happens, our trauma pattern, and how it comes to the surface when we're in relationship? Okay. All right, good. So now the third thing that I want to present to you today is, okay, this I don't want you to take this as an insult. And maybe you're already aware of this, Lynn, but others watching this later, I don't want you to take it as an insult, or that something that you're stupid or that you're crazy. Okay. But I'm going to let you know, if you have had childhood trauma, then you need professional help with changing this trauma response. And there are some reasons why. The trauma response kicks in automatically. And it also it's very persistent. And then it also has resistance that backs it up. There's going to be a part of you that when you try to change this pattern, this part of you is going to stand up and say, heck no, we are not going there. There is no way I am going to let down my wall. There is no way I am going to allow myself to love myself, because that's too dangerous. Okay. And so what professional help can do for you is to help identify those parts of you that are bringing this resistance to the change. And you won't always so readily notice the pattern kicking in. And so with professional help, then a professional can identify when that is kicking in. Here's an analogy like that I like to give that goes along with this. And that's of, years ago, before we had Google Maps on our phones and, these maps so readily available to us, I had bought my husband a TomTom, a GPS navigator. And so we were cheap, and so we never did update it. And they were, it was horribly out of date. And you know how much construction goes on and roads get changed and everything. So we were traveling out of town one time, and it kept telling us to go in this one direction. And it was leading us into a field because the roads had changed, and the TomTom did not know that the roads had changed. And it just kept persisting. My husband kind of has a good sense of where things are. So, he can picture things in his head, like a map in his head. I can't. I no sense of direction. But so this TomTom anyway, it kept trying to redirect us. And you know how they do, like, turn around. It would say, go up here and make a U-turn, make a U-turn, make a U-turn. And it just kept on persistently wanting us to drive into this field because it believed that was the way to go. And so this trauma response does the same thing. It tells you this situation is just as dangerous as when you were a child. This person is just as dangerous as your dad was. This person is as big a liar as your stepmother was. And so professional help will look at help to identify that for you. And also, like I said, that resistance that comes up that tries to make sure that it keeps you safe. And so you are in counseling. Yeah, I knew you had said that. So I figured this would make sense for you. But does it make sense for you as to this is why you would need it? And I wanted to also tell you about another woman in the program, because we just recently, on our group call, just recently, she just sounded so good. And I commented on her that her voice, just the way she was talking, really conveyed just such an inner strength. And this woman has come from this background of such incredible abuse when she was a child, physical and emotional abuse by her parents and her siblings, and just never being defended by anyone. But she was always the bad one. She was always the one who was at fault. And when she came into the program, she just struggled so much with shame. Shame was huge for her. And fear. She had so much anxiety and was so fearful of what people thought of her. She was so fearful of making other people, of upsetting them. And so she would hide her emotions from them. And then when she would be interact like with her husband, then she would just be angry all the time. And so I asked her, like, well, she would just break down in tears when we would talk, and she would just shut down, and she wouldn't be able to move on for in the very beginning. It would take her a couple weeks, and then as she progressed, it kind of moved back to like just a couple of days or a few days. And then the other day, she had an interaction with one of her siblings who in the past would have terrorized her, and she would have been frozen in fear. But she just practiced what she learned in the program, and she took some deep breaths, and she's like, I don't have to go there. And she was just okay. And on our phone call, our group call, she just was so confident. And she was saying how she doesn't just get shut down by her emotions anymore. And so a lot of what we had to work with was that resistance of, she was so afraid to love herself. She was so afraid to have compassion for herself, because she had learned as a child that if she did that, then she would get pounced on and she would get hurt very badly. And so that was something that we really had to work through. And she has been working so hard. I'm so proud of her. Okay. So you've said, I'm looking at what you've written here, Lynn. Okay. Yeah. Of course you would have that fear response. That is a fear response is a very normal response. And even if, she's still in your life and she is still dangerous, there's nothing wrong with having fear. Fear is, when someone is truly dangerous, then fear is a good response. Now, what happens to you with that fear, that's something that you would want to work on, Lynn. Does it cause you to become paralyzed and not be able to move on for days? Do you obsess about it? Why did I say this? And how did she respond? And, if it gets stuck in your head, that's part of that trauma response, because that's you trying to work it out to try to make it okay so you can get to a place of safety. And that's what you would want to heal. Okay. Now, I have a special offer for you. If you, Lynn, or anyone listening to this, watching this later, if you would like to try out my Mastering Emotions program, I would love to have you in there to go through this, because this is exactly what we do in my program. And I would like to give you a free one-on-one call with me. And then what we would do is, after you're in the program for a couple weeks, then we would set up this call, and it'd be similar to this, but you would have your camera on and your microphone. And then we would, talk about what you're learning in the program, how it applies to you, and considering your background and your story. And this would give you just a good, strong start. And also what I want to do, now, sometimes money is a problem for people. And so that's why I have the standard level, which is $49 a month. But if you're really, really interested in this, then I will give you that $49 a month price. If you pay like a quarterly, if you pay it for the quarter, which is going to be about $150. And also that will, I will give that to you, but that will put you in the premium level. So then you can do the group calls with me, and you can schedule one-on-one calls. The one-on-one calls are extra. You pay for those when you schedule them, but you only get the opportunity for the one-on-one calls when you're a premium member. Does that make sense for you? Did you catch that? So you will get, if you get in now, let me see, this is Thursday, so we give this until Saturday night at midnight. If you get in before then then I'll give you that free one-on-one call. Yeah, you would have to talk to your husband, I'm sure. So the free one-on-one call, and then also if you wanted to do the premium level and you're sure you want to do it, then you could get it at the quarterly rate, and it's going to be half off for you, which is, or if you just want to try it out, then you can do the monthly and the standard, which is going to be the $49 a month. Okay. So, you know, I want you to understand too, this does take a little time to go through the program. It takes, you're going to probably spend a couple hours a week, an hour a week to watch a video, and then an hour to do the journal work and talk with me in the forums about what you're discovering and allowing me to help you with that. So sometimes women can have, they're fearful of their emotions too, and they're afraid of what they're going to learn about themselves. And that's very much understandable, because when you have had trauma, one of the tendencies is to just push your emotions down and to ignore them. And so the only one that you really recognize is anger. And then sometimes you don't even say you're angry, but you say you're frustrated. But we do work through that fear of your emotions and helping you to, the whole program is to decrease the intensity of your emotions so that you can work through them. Do you have any questions? Yeah, you say you're frustrated. Okay. Yeah, I'm not surprised. A lot of Christian women, especially, they don't want to say that they're angry. They're just frustrated. Yeah, do you have any questions for me? I know there's still a delay here. So sorry about that. Okay. Lynn, are you good? I'm gonna just tell me no if you don't have any questions. Oh, is it okay to unfriend and protect? You know, I can't really speak to that about what you should do and shouldn't do in a relationship. What I try to work with you on is what goes on within inside of you. So right now, what you're telling me is, you know, this fear response is kicking in. And so what you're wanting to do right away is protect yourself by unfriending her. And, you know, so that's normal, that's understandable, and it might be something that you would want to do. But I can't tell you, yes, you should unfriend her. Okay, that's not my place to do that. But you know, we would look at, if we were to work on this further, then we would look at, is that your normal response when you become fearful, that you create that distance by unfriending people in some way? Maybe putting a wall up, shutting yourself off, shutting them out, or something like that. Okay. Okay. And welcome to Tammy. Tammy, I think you might have got here. You might be in a different time zone, because we did start at an hour ago. Okay. Yeah, you haven't done anything like this before. Okay. All right. Well, we are going to end for tonight, and I will be sending out a video recording of this call and this workshop, so you can view it. And especially for you, Tammy, I'm glad you showed up, but I hope you will get to watch the video of it. Okay. I actually did the same thing myself on a webinar today. I was kind of embarrassed, but anyway, So thanks for coming, and let me know if you later, when you get the email, you can reply to that email if you have any questions. All right. Good night now.